Do you think a shopping mall makes money by selling space? If so, why are some kiosks just a few square meters worth more than stores spanning hundreds of meters? And why can a mall that was once nearly 100% occupied disappear in just a few years? Behind the brightly lit corridors is a complex financial machine where every step a customer takes is priced, every contract hides a secret, and just one broken link can bring the entire system down. Join me in discovering the surprising story and the little-known secrets behind the shopping mall business. The most valuable thing in a shopping mall is not the building, but the flow of people. If standing in front of a giant shopping mall, most people would think the most valuable thing is the building made of concrete, glass, and steel. I used to think so too. But the more I followed the billion-dollar acquisitions, the more I realized a rather chilling truth. Investors are not spending money to buy a roof. They are buying control over a flow of people. How much is this building worth? An old investor just smiled and answered, "Don't look at the building, look at the parking lot." That sounded very strange, but I understood later. If the parking lot is full from morning to night, it means tens of thousands of people are walking through those doors every day, and every single step has a price. That is the real product the shopping mall sells. Not clothes, not shoes, not electronics either, but the attention of customers. Every store inside is paying to stand on the path that thousands of people must pass by. The more people see their signs, the greater the chance of selling goods. Therefore, for the exact same store area, locations just a few dozen meters apart can create a huge difference in rent. Someone once asked a commercial real estate manager, "What keeps you awake the most?" He answered almost immediately, "The day customer foot traffic drops is the day I start losing money." It sounds simple, but that sentence explains almost the entire industry. A crowded shopping mall does not just happen naturally. Before laying the first brick, developers spent years studying population maps, average income, traffic density, population growth rate, and even the direction of cars moving every weekend. They do not choose places with a lot of empty land. They choose places with a lot of people. A cheap piece of land far from residential areas is almost worthless for this model. Meanwhile, a piece of land in the middle of a wealthy suburb where tens of thousands of people have to drive by every day could be worth dozens of times more. That is why two shopping malls that look almost identical on the outside can have values worlds apart. One is packed with cars. The other is so empty that footsteps echo down the halls. The difference between them is not in the architecture. It is in the flow of people. And this is also where every tragedy begins. When the number of customers is still increasing, every store feels they are in the right place. But as soon as the flow of people starts to change direction, that entire giant money-making machine also begins to shake. At first, it is just a few stores saying slower. Then, a few lease contracts are not renewed. Looking from the outside, there is nothing to worry about. But behind the shiny glass panels, the numbers have silently changed. That was the moment I realized a shopping mall has never survived on its walls. It survives on the feet walking through the doors every day. And when those feet disappear, the rest is just a matter of time. LA stores do not make money for the mall owner. They just bring in customers. After understanding that the flow of people is the most valuable asset of a shopping mall, I started turning to the lease contracts that almost no one outside the industry has ever seen. Right there, a paradox emerged. The largest store in the entire building is not the tenant paying the most rent. At first, I thought I misread it. A fashion store of just a few hundred square meters pays a rent per square meter many times higher than a giant department store at the end of the hall. Why is that? I once brought that question to a commercial property manager. He just smiled and took a pen to draw a long line on the mall's floor plan. "Do you see the two ends of the building?" "I see. That is where we put the famous names. Not to make money from them, but to pull people all the way down this path." He tapped lightly on the row of stores in the middle. This is where the revenue is made. At that moment, the whole picture finally came together. A big brand is like a magnet. People drive tens of kilometers just to go there to buy an item. But from the parking lot to that store, they have to walk past dozens of other shops. A pair of shoes on sale, a fragrant cup of coffee, a brightly lit cosmetic store, a tiny accessory stand. If just a few out of thousands of customers stop, the entire profit calculation changes. What the mall owner actually sells to the small stores has never been four walls. They sell the opportunity to be seen. A store owner once told me, "I don't rent a store, I rent the flow of people passing by." That is the shortest but also the most accurate saying about this business. Because of that, anchor brands like Sears or Macy's almost enjoy a special price. In return, they have to do something even more important than rent. They have to keep the parking lot full. They have to make families continue to choose this place every weekend. They have to pull those first steps into the doors of the shopping mall. For the rest, the small stores will turn those steps into sales themselves. Therefore, if you look at the books, sometimes the largest store contributes far less rent than many small stores combined. It sounds absurd, but in the world of shopping malls, size does not determine value. The ability to generate foot traffic is the real currency. That is also why mall owners always accept a seemingly unfair deal for decades. As long as the flow of people still flows, every link in the chain can make money. But exactly when the most important link starts to waver, the whole system silently enters a dangerous phase that very few outsiders notice in time. The secret lies in the fine print of the contract. At this point, many people will think they understand how a shopping mall makes money. Stores pay rent, the mall owner collects money every month, and the story ends there. But the truth still has another layer. A layer hidden in a few pages of paper that shoppers never see. While reviewing the profile of a large retail chain one time, I noticed something quite strange. Below the fixed rent section was another clause, just a few short lines. Revenue sharing percentage. I asked the property manager sitting across from me, "You mean the mall owner takes extra money on top of the rent?" He nodded. "If the store sells better, we also sell better." Just one sentence changed my whole perspective on this industry. It turns out rent is just the minimum threshold to enter the game. The more attractive part lies behind it. Each store will have a pre-written revenue threshold in the contract. When sales exceed that number, a small portion of the surplus is transferred back to the mall owner. It does not sound like much, but try imagining hundreds of stores operating together in one building. Every store just needs to slightly exceed the target. When all those small amounts are added up, it becomes a massive cash flow. The interesting thing is the mall owner does not need to import more goods, does not need to hire sales staff, does not need to stand at the cash register. They just need to keep the machine inside running well enough. A brand owner once joked with me, "My best-selling day is also the day the mall owner smiles the most." That saying sounds funny, but it reflects the true nature. The two sides are no longer landlord and tenant in the usual way. They become people sitting in the same boat. If the store is crowded, both benefit. If sales stagnate, both start feeling the weight of the numbers. That is also why the mall management always finds every way to draw in more customers. They organize weekend festivals, seasonal decorations, invite performance events, set up play areas for kids. Not because those activities directly bring in a lot of money, but because every person stepping into the mall can create dozens of transactions behind the glass doors. The more receipts printed out, the bigger the mall owner's cash flow silently grows. But this seemingly perfect mechanism itself creates an invisible pressure. When customer purchasing power starts to slow down, the revenue sharing amount also quietly disappears first. The fixed rent may still be there. The stores are still open. The lights are still on. The music still plays evenly in the corridors. Looking from the outside, no one notices anything unusual. Only the people sitting in front of the revenue reports know that the once smoothly operating machine is starting to make very small noises. And in major collapses, those small noises usually appear long before anyone sees the first crack, the silent fee that every store must pay. By this time, I began to believe I had seen almost all the cash flows inside a shopping mall. Space rent, revenue sharing, everything seemed too clear, until another stack of documents was placed on the table. The manager flipped to a page full of numbers and asked me, "Do you know who pays to turn on all the lights in this building every night?" I answered immediately, "The mall owner." He shook his head. "Not quite." That was when I learned of a concept that most shoppers had never heard of. CAM. 3 short letters, yet they silently run this entire giant machine. Try to imagine a shopping mall spanning hundreds of thousands of square meters. Every day, the air conditioning system must run continuously. The corridor lights cannot be turned off. The escalators must keep running. The janitors clean the floors from morning to night. The security team patrols every area. The parking lot must be maintained. The trees need trimming. The restrooms must always be clean. If just one item stops, customers will notice immediately. The cost to keep all those things running is not small at all. What surprised me was that the one bearing most of that cost is not the mall owner. A coffee shop owner once gave a wry smile when signing the contract. "I thought I only paid rent," the manager replied very calmly. "The rent is just the admission ticket. But behind it is the operating bill. That is CAM. Each store will contribute a portion of the common expenses, usually based on the area they use. A large store pays more, a small store pays less. But all must participate. Thanks to this, the owner does not have to bear the entire huge expense alone to keep the mall brightly lit and running smoothly. At first glance, this is a very reasonable mechanism. Whoever uses the common space shares the cost. But the more I followed the financial reports, the more I noticed a thought-provoking detail. These expenses almost never disappear, whether the mall is packed with customers that day or the corridors have only a few people scattered around. The air conditioner still has to run, the guards still have to be on duty, the cameras still have to record, the fire alarm system still has to be active. The whole machine continues to consume money every hour. Because of this, many mall owners do not just care about filling the stores. They also have to keep the entire system running stably enough so that the tenants agree to stay. Because as soon as the fixed costs start getting too heavy, the atmosphere in the meetings also changes. The smiles gradually become fewer. The negotiations take longer. A few stores start recalculating. No one raises their voice. There is no sign of chaos. But right beneath the shiny floor, the gears of the machine have started turning slower. And that is usually the first signal warning that a seemingly normal shopping mall is quietly entering a completely different phase. The real gold mine is sometimes only a few square meters wide. After weeks of tracing leases, revenue reports, and operating costs, I began to feel like I had seen the entire money-making machine of a shopping mall. Then, one afternoon, I stood in the middle of the corridor of a packed mall. Right in front of me was a phone case stand less than a few square meters wide. But what caught my attention was not the goods on the shelf. It was its location. The flow of people from all four directions had to pass by. No one could avoid it. I asked the manager standing next to me, "A stand this small must have cheap rent?" He laughed. "It's much more expensive than many large stores." I stayed silent for a few seconds. It sounded ridiculous. But then he pointed toward the line of people walking past. "You're looking at the wrong thing. We don't price by area. We price by the number of eyes passing by every day." That sentence reminded me of what had appeared in the previous parts. From the very beginning, the product of a shopping mall has never been concrete or glass. Their product is attention. And those tiny kiosks are standing right where attention reaches its highest value. A large store against the wall might be 20 times bigger, but the number of people actively walking in is much less. Meanwhile, a small accessory stand in the middle of a hallway intersection hardly needs to invite anyone. Customers walk by on their own, see it on their own, and many stop simply out of curiosity. It's not just kiosks. The advertising screens constantly changing images, the seasonal booths, the holiday photo areas, the weekend fairs, the product launch events, even the parking lots in densely populated areas. Every seemingly ordinary space is turned into an asset that generates cash flow. An event staff member once said while looking at the crowd lining up, "They think they came to have fun. We are seeing revenue." That wasn't a joke. Every event organized brings more people in. Every new visitor increases the value of every square meter inside the center. The machine begins to amplify itself. The more crowded it is, the more valuable the small stands become. The more the billboards are worth. The more businesses want to appear. The cash flow keeps pouring in. That was when I understood, in this world, size does not determine value. A corner of the hallway just big enough to place a juice cart can generate more profit than a store hundreds of meters wide if it is in exactly the place everyone is forced to walk through. But precisely when every empty space has been turned into money, another question starts to arise. What happens if the flow of people that once created that value suddenly starts thinning out one day? Because from that moment on, it is not just the large stores that suffer. Even the smallest gold mines in the center will start losing their most precious thing. Those are the footsteps. Every step you take has been calculated long in advance. By this time, the picture of how a shopping mall makes money is almost complete. Space rent, revenue sharing, operating fees, tiny kiosks, and every crowded square meter are silently generating cash flow every day. But there is still one unanswered question. If customer foot traffic is the most valuable thing, then who decides which direction the flow of people will go? The answer is not in the store. It lies right in the blueprint of the entire building. Once, when looking at the original drawings of a large shopping mall, I realized that the seemingly ordinary long corridors were full of numbers, arrows, and strange symbols. Why aren't the escalators placed right in the middle? I asked an architect who had been with the industry for decades. He smiled. If placed in the middle, customers would walk less. He took a pen and drew a line from the main entrance to the end of the hallway. We want them to walk this entire path. That was when I understood. The escalator is not at the end of the hall for convenience. It's there because the mall owner wants you to look at dozens more stores before stepping up to the next floor. The two big stores are not placed next to each other either. They are placed far apart on purpose. To get to where they need to be, customers are forced to walk past almost the entire mall. No one forces them. There are no special directional signs, but every walkway is leading you to exactly where the blueprint anticipated many years ago. Even the lighting is not random. During the day, natural light blends with the internal lighting system to keep the space always feeling pleasant. Many people walk in during the early afternoon. When they step out, they are startled to look at their watch. Wait, is it almost evening already? A manager just smiled. That is what we want to happen. Stay in longer. Walk past more stores. The likelihood of buying an extra item is also higher. That is the chain reaction that the entire building is silently creating. What made me think the most is that every small detail serves the same goal. Where the resting chairs are placed, which direction the turns open up to, which floor the food court is on. Even the space between the stalls is calculated so the flow of people is not interrupted. This space is more like a stage than a construction project. Everyone who walks in is an actor without knowing they are participating in a pre-written script. And if the previous parts explain why every footstep has value, this part reveals how those footsteps are guided. But also because everything is linked so tightly, if just one important link disappears, that entire perfect route will begin to break. The flow of people changes direction. The corridors gradually become emptier. The locations once considered golden land also lose their value. That is the moment the seemingly unstoppable machine starts showing its first cracks, and from here, the story will enter a phase where many famous shopping malls could not turn back. The true asset, foot traffic. After everything I had tracked for months, I realized the story of a shopping mall has never solely revolved around the stores. It has always revolved around a single question. Why do people have to come here today? There was a time when the answer was very simple. Wanted to buy clothes, wanted to try on a pair of shoes, wanted to look at a new TV, wanted the whole family to take a weekend stroll. But then everything changed very slowly. So slowly that many people didn't notice. A phone appeared on the dining table, a few taps on the screen. The item was ordered. 2 days later, the box sat in front of the door. No need to find a parking spot. No need to walk all those long hallways. No need to stand in line to pay. What was once the shopping mall's greatest advantage suddenly became something that many people no longer needed. A longtime store owner looked at the sparsely populated corridor and sighed. My customers didn't disappear, they just changed their address. That sentence made the whole room go silent. But the interesting thing is that not every shopping mall collapsed. Those that survived chose a completely different path. They stopped selling reasons to buy goods. They started selling reasons to leave your house. The empty spaces that used to be clothing stores gradually turned into crowded restaurants. Movie theaters were upgraded. Gyms opened from early morning. Clinics, healthcare centers, workspaces, hotels, and even apartments appeared in the same complex. An executive once told me a very memorable sentence. We don't compete with the internet, we compete with the sofa. He was right. Because no one can deliver a dinner with friends through a screen. No one can send to your door the feeling of a whole family watching a movie together. No one can box up the laughter of children in a play area or the gathering of relatives after a busy week. Those are the things the internet cannot put into a box. It was then that I understood why many shopping malls still keep their lights on, even though retail stores have dwindled. They are no longer places that sell products. They have become places that sell time, emotions, and the experiences that people still want to feel in person. Looking back at the whole story, I believe the biggest mistake is thinking that a shopping mall is just a building full of stores. In reality, it is like a living creature. Every store is an organ. Every footstep is a blood vessel. Every dollar of revenue is a heartbeat. When the parts coordinate smoothly, that machine can create value for decades. But when people no longer find a reason to walk through those doors, every contract, every smart design, and every revenue stream once considered perfect gradually lose their meaning. In the end, what decides the fate of a shopping mall has never been the size of the building. It is the ability to make people want to return tomorrow.